Commander on deck.
At ease, Michael.
Coffee on the side for you, ma'am.
Marvelous. Thank you, Mr. Chandra. Well, we have a check-in with the Commodore in 10 minutes, and it is before his breakfast, so I think I'll take the con and spare you his flowery demeanor.
You're too kind. Captain has the con.
Captain, we're receiving an urgent communique on the Intrafleet channel.
Mr. Trevelyan, is this part of the exercise?
Doesn't look like a captain. This was sent by Scrambler. Just give me a moment to,
What is it, Commander?
Message reads, Union attack in progress across outer Axios system.
Union attack?
Severe losses taken. Numerous vessels captured by hostile forces. Wartime readiness conditions now in effect. Make report to all stations. All units to proceed to Case Foxglove. This message is 4 hours old, Captain. There's a Case's intelligence packet attached rating a high probability that Saravis is their next target.
Has the flagship received this?
If they have, they don't seem to have acknowledged.
Break exercise protocol on my authority and put me through to Commodore Sevelgard.
Aye, Captain.
Commander, may I remind you that we are engaged in training maneuvers, and you have been clearly instructed to maintain radio silence on this frequency.
My apologies, Commodore, but you may wish to check the Intrafleet channels, sir.
Commander, this is a high-security training operation. All external communiques are placed on hold until the exercise is completed.
If I may, sir. Intrafleet is reporting a Union attack and instructing us to prepare for possible action. I believe the message demands your immediate attention, sir.
Very well. One moment, Commander. Commander Hawker, I am aborting this exercise. I forwarded the transmission to Commodore Hadley at Fort Farbridge, but it is unlikely support will be able to reach us in time. Please withdraw your training group to my position immediately.
Aye, sir. Mr. Chandra, lay us away 3 points of starboard, 2800, and trim for 5G burn back to the flagship. Signal the training group to follow.
Aye, Captain. 2800.
Mr. Trevelyan, beat to quarters.
Yes, ma'am.
At 3 bells on the afternoon of the 21st of Equinox, 291 PCU, a Union force under the joint command of Fleet Leader Devin Tandil and Free Warden Tacito Lemaire passed through the Atamara Saravis driftgate. With CDF reinforcements from Vidara's Fort Farbridge several days away, and Union reinforcements from Abascal's newly bolstered pirate force far closer, any attempt to hold the system for the assembly seems ill-advised. Commodore Dmitri Sevelgard and Staff Captain Beatrice Hampton of Fort Alancourt quickly recognized that evacuating the sparse local population of civilian scientists and their families should be their first priority. A signal is sent to the orbital spaceport at Cormorant Station over Saravis, instructing them to retrieve any planet-side personnel and assemble a convoy of vessels to vacate the system before Union forces complete their burn towards their target. With his training groups scattered around the orbital proving grounds over Addicus, Sevelgard decides to detach 2 of his corvettes, the Monitress and Protectress, to intercept the fleeing civilian convoy and escort them to the Saravis Valeria driftgate. Fort Alancourt and its proving grounds are a fairly well-fortified area, with 2 sizable IFF minefields providing a defensive screen, and 3 Quarrel-Lock coil gun platforms offering lethal firepower at very long range. Most of Sevelgaard's fleet have managed to consolidate within the protective umbrella of the minefields and defense platforms before the Union's arrival, but a sizable group led by the Confiance-class frigate Sapphire were delayed in starting their burn back to the fort after wasting precious time requesting duplicate confirmation of their new orders from the distant Flagship.
All ships. Lyrian Point, take station on my wing. We will advance in good order to rendezvous with the Sapphire's group and cover their withdrawal.
Flagship, Arbitress Actual. If I may, sir, we are in a fortified position. Taking our ships away from the fort to provide cover would allow the enemy to engage our entire force in the open.
Commander, you have already been reminded to maintain transmission etiquette once today. I will not remind you again. All vessels will form an abreast line on the Flagship and advance immediately. Sevelgaard out.
With Sevelgaard's fleet now roughly halfway to the retreating training group, Union forces alter their deployment to respond. The Union's vanguard of agile Indria-class outriders, only moments from their original targets, suddenly change course, bypassing the Sapphire's group entirely and beginning a high-G burn toward the CDF main force, with the Union's second and third echelons being swiftly reallocated to engage the training group. Suddenly realizing the seriousness of his mistake, Commodore Sevelgaard then compounds his decision by attempting to turn his forces back to the safety of the fort, abandoning their outbound course. This order creates mass confusion and leaves the CDF formation disoriented and incoherent when Union forces enter firing range. The Commodore's main force and the isolated training group are engaged almost simultaneously, with both quickly finding themselves overwhelmed. Surrounded and now cut off from any avenue of retreat after only a brief exchange of fire, the Sapphire, Dorothea, and Mosswood all strike their colours, surrendering to Union forces, who leave a number of vessels behind to begin boarding operations, while the rest continue to advance without losing a step. Commodore Sevelgaard and his disarrayed fleet suddenly find themselves under a vicious and multilateral attack, immediately suffering severe casualties.
All ships, Lyrian Point, redeploy to defensive posture, coordinate fire.
Only moments into the engagement, the Centran Flagship suffers a direct coil gun hit, which perforates the ship's quarterdeck, killing the entire command staff, including Commodore Sevelgaard. The stricken Lyrian Point is immobilized, but her gun crews continue to engage, and the ship of the line therefore remains the focus of the attacking Union forces. Aboard the Arbitress, Commander Hawker recognizes this will not remain the case for long, and uses these moments carefully.
This is Cormier Actual. Flagship has stopped transmitting. They're taking heavy fire. Who's in command? Do we move to assist?
Negative, Cormier. Disengage. All ships, this is Arbitress Actual. I'm assuming command of the fleet. All CDF vessels still able are to make best speed back to the fort immediately and consolidate there. Do not wait for formation. I say again, full retreat.
Taking advantage of the distraction provided by the Lyrian Point's final stand, Commander Hawker establishes a head start for her forces in their withdrawal to the fort, while simultaneously transferring what remains of the Lyrian Point's fighter and longboat complement to her own formation. Having sustained heavy damage, the Lyrian Point suffers a gravitic bottle failure and begins to rapidly abandon ship, while the Arbitress, Aviatress, and Matthew Cormier commit to a grueling high-G burn toward the fort. As the Lyrian Point's reactor overloads, attacking Union vessels are briefly forced to scatter to avoid blast damage, further lengthening the head start afforded to Hawker's fleet before the Union can begin their pursuit. A small number of coil gun-equipped Florencia-class vessels in the Union vanguard managed to stay close enough to remain in effective firing range, resulting in an extended stern chase as Hawker's group retreats. Several longboats are destroyed, and the Matthew Cormier suffers serious damage. But a number of Union vessels are also eliminated by return fire. Eventually, it is the more modern G-force damping systems of the Centron vessels that saves them, as most of the Union outriders are forced to decelerate and drop out of range in order to avoid seriously endangering their crews in a prolonged high-G burn. As Hawker's force reaches the safety of the fort, the Union fleet slows their advance just outside of the defense platform's effective range to review their strategy.
Alancourt Actual, this is Hawker.
Hampton here.
If I may, Mom. Most of the fleet is out of action. We can't hold this system. The ships and personnel we have left will be wasted if we stay here. The civilians are already clear. I suggest we abandon the fort and the system and make a full retreat through the west gate.
If we abandon the fort, it'll be necessary for a skeleton crew to remain aboard to operate the defense systems during the retreat. With some of the reports coming out of Addicus, my staff over here aren't too thrilled about the idea of being Union POWs. Are you certain retreat is the best course of action?
Yes, Mom. I am. But as regards to the fort, you are the ranking officer on the scene. I will defer to your judgment.
Very well. I'll command the reserve contingent myself and remain here. We'll begin unloading all other staff and equipment immediately.
Thank you, Captain. Good luck to you.
As the Union begin their attack on the fort, they attempt to carry the engagement as quickly as possible, minimizing the time their fleet spends within range of the lethal coil gun platforms before they can disable them. As Indria-class outriders begin aggressive burns toward the gun platforms, Florencia-class vessels already deployed ahead of them make use of specially improvised canisters of sand, harvested directly from the surface of Mayala's Rest, to sandcast and prematurely detonate portions of the fort's minefields. This creates narrow avenues of attack, which the Indria-class vessels adopt narrow formations to exploit, reaching the gun platforms with minimal delay. With most of Fort Alancourt's staff now loaded aboard transport craft, and the final line of defense about to fall, Commander Hawker gives the order to quit the field, and her flotilla begins to safely withdraw toward the Seravis Valeria driftgate. Disabling all of the coil gun platforms with only minor losses, and then circumnavigating the diminished minefields, Union forces quickly reach Fort Alancourt and begin boarding actions. The fort's skeleton crew immediately surrender to the boarding teams, and are surprised when, per the specific orders of Tandil and Lemaire, they are treated respectfully and taken into custody unharmed. The fort and the system are claimed by the Frontier Union, barring a number of surface engagements that would play out over the following months to dislodge small pockets of military resistance on the surface of Seravis Major, who had refused to evacuate. The Sapphire, Mosswood, and Dorothea are commandeered and added to Devin Tandil's fleet as Union warships, with their crews, and the fort's contingent both briefly held on Dulstaff under Freewarden Lemaire's protection, and later ransomed back to the Assembly still unharmed. The Battle of Addicus marked the beginning of what would become known as the Tandil Rush, pitched to Hakim and Deban by Devin Tandil as a strategy of relentlessness and aggressive attacks intended to keep the CDF permanently on the defensive. While this was certainly true in practice, in truth, the Tandil Rush was just as much an effort by Lemaire and Tandil to keep their own forces on the front line, at least on the southwestern front, putting them in a position to minimize casualties where they could, and give Hakim and Deban as little cause as possible to let Acelia Abascal off her leash.
Commander Hawker,
Yes, sir.
The Admiralty has seen your report. We received their response an hour ago.
If I may, sir, I appreciate that I did overstep my authority in assuming command. I only felt
Explain this to me, Commander. When the Lyrian Point was disabled, you countermanded an attempt to defend her. You ordered your vessels to leave their flagship to die. You even co-opted the Lyrian Point's fighters and longboats, taking away her last line of defense.
With respect, sir, I saved those fighters and longboats, and I saved the rest of our fleet. The flagship was lost the moment Sevelgard took her into the open. Anyone who stayed there would have met the same fate.
Marvellous! I entirely agree. And more importantly, I'm glad you're willing to say it. You may be glad to know that while the Admiralty mourns the Commodore's loss, their assessment of his command during the battle is not favourable. An unusual display of perspicacity by our esteemed Admiralty, and no mistake. I would not become used to it. As for your actions, Commander, well, it seems for better or worse, you have drawn the attention of a rather high office. This was attached to the dispatch and addressed to you. From Fleet Admiral Darius Fallon, Commander-in-Chief, Central Defence Force, to Commander Ariana Caitlin Hawker. In recognition of conspicuous gallantry in the face of overwhelming odds, and of decisive leadership in coordinating and enacting an effective fighting retreat during the fall of Saravis Major, we, the Office of the Admiralty of the Central Defence Force, being of sound mind and judgment, do, by these presents, constitute and appoint you to the rank of Post-Captain. Congratulations, Captain.
Thank you, Commodore. And to the Admiral as well.
They're giving you a frigate, the Vanquisher. You'll be allowed to retain your current command staff and have your choice of new officers.
If I may, sir, do you know where we'll be sent?
Not specifically for the moment, but east. Now that you're a captain, you're due a captain's candour, so understand this. Sevelgard was an idiot, and he's not alone. We've had similar stories from across the cluster. Admiral Farron has been saying this for years, though you'll find few in my position willing to admit it. The CDF is languid and complacent from decades of peace. Our command corps is stacked with desk admirals and landed gentry, and the Union just caught the whole lot of them with their asses hanging out. If we are going to have any chance of recovering, we need shrewd and proactive new officers, promoted for what they do rather than who they are. I dare say the Admiral made the right choice. So, to your health, Captain, and a swift end to this war.
Thank you, sir. Fair winds.
Thank you for watching. You can get the Sojourn through various distributors, all of which are accessible through www.thesojournaudiodrama.com. You can also get the series through Patreon, where you'll be able to access various bonus features, including our visual dictionary, Guinevere cross-sections, and anthology shorts. Remember to join us on Discord and get regular updates on all upcoming Sojourn releases. All the related links can be found below this video. Fair winds.